Welcome back to Educational Warfare. I'm Dr. Jordan Lauer with my partner, Dr. Ryan Jackson. You can find our show on all the socials. We're on Blue Sky at Dr. Jordan Lauer. We're on X at EDU Warfare. Use the hashtag Educational Warfare to comment and reach out to us. And now we are in a new era of our show.
New era, baby. Let's go. New media movement. We're a part of it.
We are. We are video casting our show on Spotify and on YouTube. That's right. Now you can watch us and listen to us take on the issues that are attacking education. And where can they find us on YouTube, Ryan?
And make sure definitely go to our YouTube channel. That's going to be at EDU Warfare. So again, check us out on YouTube. We are video. We're out here. We're part of the new media movement. That's YouTube channel at EDU Warfare. Subscribe, lock in, watch every episode. We're bringing authenticity. We're bringing truth. We're bringing experience. We're bringing that knowledge base. But most importantly, we want to connect with our viewers, hear from you, get you a part of the conversation. So make sure you're tuned and locked in to at EDU Warfare. Let's go.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, to our newest member of the team, the man making all the video magic happen, our Gandalf, Tommy Ruth. Thank you, Tommy, so much for being a part of it. Also, don't forget to email the show at educationalwarfare.pod@gmail.com with your great questions, comments, strategies that you've been sending. We love hearing from you. We love making you a part of the show, so please keep them coming.
Hey, and I'm going to jump in just for a second and give Big Tommy Ruth a shout out. You know, we're in this new setting. We're in Cadets Toys and Comics. This, again, is part of our new media movement, you know, authenticity. We're located here in Spring Hill, Tennessee, so we're Tennesseans. Man, we are getting down in the city of Spring Hill. Right now, we are located at Cadets Toys and Comics in Spring Hill, so hyper local. Come check us out. Man, they have got everything here from comics, collectibles, toys, cards. I mean, everything you need. It's a really cool spot for kids. It's also a great spot for grown-up nerds like myself. So we are reporting live from Cadets Toys and Comics in Spring Hill. You can tell, dude, I'm excited. I could not be more excited to be doing this today.
This is a playground for me. I'm going to try not to be too distracted by looking around at all the awesome comics I want to buy.
Yeah, it's just good energy,
right,
man. You know, you're in this creative space with all this really cool energy and these cool characters.
By beautiful art, beautiful characters. I'm a little worried about where my bank account might be hanging out near too much, but we'll get to that later.
Nostalgia.
Right? But today, we're covering a topic that fills our homes, that fills our schools, fills our workplaces. Something our world would be a lot better if we all understood a little deeper, and that is Gen Z.
Yeah, to me, man, no more important topic right now, whether it's education, whether it's industry, whether it's humanity, technology. If you are not talking about Generation Z, who they are, what they want, what they're capable of, what they don't want, I mean, that to me is the most pertinent threshold conversation. Who is Gen Z? What are they doing? Where are they going? That's what we're digging in today. Could not be more excited. You know, we're both educators, so Gen Z right now is really our world, and we'll kind of dig into that specifically. But yeah, we're talking Gen Z today. Man, lead us into it, baby. Let's go, Dr. J.
Yeah, they're just a part of our everyday lives, a part of all of our lives. Like I said, they're in our hallways, our homes, our workplaces. You know, so let's cover who is Gen Z.
Who are they, man?
All right, so Generation Z is anyone born after 1996. Their age range are currently 12 to 27 years old, and they are a large generation with 73 million strong.
That's a lot.
It is a lot. Man. So it's not just this tiny little bubble of our society. They are a large freight train of a generation moving within our society.
Got some reflections of baby boomers there. Just a big, large cohort, chocked full of people. And you said not only 75 million strong, but that's ages 12 to 27, right? So current Gen Z generation is 12 to 27, and you said born after 96. So immediately, you know, my brain is going to these bookends, right? And, you know, I'm a movie guy. I mean, I love film, you know, film buff, film lover, former film producer, just love that world. So sometimes I think in terms of movies when they came out and how that kind of catalogs our life a little bit. So when I'm thinking of Gen Z, that's ages 12 to 27, born after 96, that's going to frame it up for us, right? With a generation that has film bookends of Titanic when they're born, right? So Gen Z now enters the world. What's the biggest movie at that time to start their generational cohort? Titanic, epic story of a ship that hits an iceberg and crashes. Historical. We'll get into that.
I'm the king of the world, baby.
The end of that generation, right? What cuts off their cohort. So the end of that bookend, the Hunger Games, Battle Royale, kill or be killed. I mean, the mindset behind that. So massive ship hits an iceberg, historical significance, Battle Royale, kill or be killed, Big Brother. We're going to dive into that. That's the bookends for that generational cohort. I just love how that's framed up, man. What do you think on that?
I think that's great. I think it's perfect. You know, like if you think of Titanic and you're thinking of this generation. So I'm with you, Ryan. My whole life, I can literally, in my mind, I go throughout the years of my life, probably by the movies that affected me. I think, 96, boom, the movies are what popped in my head. That's about it. So you think of Titanic and you're thinking about Gen Z. You know, and why are these the bookends? Why is that such a perfect thing? You know, you think of Rose, right? Rose, the main character, is young, but she's from money. And her world, you know, society that she's a part of expects certain things from her. She needs to marry somebody who can help out the family, who's part of that money, and she doesn't want to. She gets on this ship. She's in that. She has this fiance. She's kind of like, yeah, he's cute. I mean, it's Billy Zane, so he's cute. You know, so she's like, he's cute, but not a huge fan. And she meets Jack, who's played by Leonardo DiCaprio, and she wants that adventurous life, but she's pushing against the expectations of her. And that's what Gen Z's kind of doing. They're trying to remold this whole thing. We're like, no, you do it this way.
All right, but let me push you there.
Okay.
All right, and it's been a little while since I've watched Titanic, admittedly. Right. Okay, but I do remember it was on VHS, man. That bad boy was two cassettes.
2 cassettes.
So in Titanic, though, isn't Rose a bit of an unreliable narrator?
But she is. I mean, she doesn't know what she wants either, and I think that's a big part of it. When I say that Gen Z wants to do it a certain way, just like her, they're not exactly sure what they want yet. You know, there's not a clear plan. They just don't want the plan we've laid in front of them, because they're
not here for oppression, man. We're not here to have something put upon us.
Right. And you know, and she wants adventure, she wants novelty. How much do we talk about that with our young people? You know, Jack he's from the lower class, but she actually loves him, which is different than the, you know, romantic expectations of her time of, hey, you may not love this guy, but he's best for the family. And we're talk about some of those even romantic like expectations of society for them as well. And so she is kind of unreliable because she doesn't really know what she wants. She's figuring it out as she goes. But to her, she, you know, not to have a pun here, she's driving the ship. And that is what, right?
Straight into that iceberg.
Right. Hopefully she sees it earlier.
That's ominous.
Right. But, you know, and just like that, and then affecting it. So they want to mold their own life. Not exactly sure where they're going, but don't want to follow the plan we've laid out. But just like.
And I love how we're keeping this on this thread as if Rose were Gen Z, like personified. You know, this idea that, hey, we're not going to have these old values put on us as an expectation. We're also not going to be comfortable with this idea of security, with this idea of, you know, wealth, even if it comes at the cost of our joy, our novelty, our ability to explore, see the world, do something different. So we're going to reject your standards. And more importantly, we're going to reject the security and the comfort that comes with those standards.
Right.
If it is at the expense of our ability to explore, to find joy, to get this novelty that's been kind of lacking in worlds like Rose's in that story, right? So let's talk about the flip side of that coin then. Because you go from, you know, we're going to deny this security, this safety, this wealth, you know, to go after this exploration, this joy, this life of novelty. And the back end of that is this Orwellian kind of battle royale, kill or be killed, man, you know, Hunger Games setup that ends that generation. So we start with this kind of philosophy of we want to be different. We reject old standards. You're not going to put these things on us. We'll take uncertainty. You know, it's a spice of life, variety, uncertainty. We'll take that uncertainty. But it culminates in the Hunger Games, dude. That's the end of that generational cohort in terms of movies. Hunger Games, battle royale, kill or be killed. Come on, give me your analysis on that, dude.
Well, when you frame it this way, so Titanic, right, is from their viewpoint of what they want for life. The thing of the Hunger Games, it's almost from their viewpoint of what society is like. So Titanic's perfect of like, I want my own, and this word will come up, authenticity. Like, I'm willing to, if I'm living an authentic life, even though it's not what you, the powers that be, want for me, I'm fine with that. I'll charge my own path. And the Hunger Games, the same powers that be set the terms of society, just what we're talking about. They choke off the resources available to Gen Z because these are ours. You get this because this is where you're at. Where Gen Z is like, no, like, if I can get there now, let me have it. I don't need to be 60 years old and get there. If I have the talent right now, I should get a piece of that pie. And then, but with that being withheld, they're basically thought of, they have to fight for that in our society of like, oh, like, I know I'm young, but...
Okay, but hold on. Man, I got to interject.
Okay.
I love what you said earlier where, Titanic, this is sort of philosophical, where they see themselves, how they want to be. So very much from the self versus Hunger Games, right? This is now society's impact on them. Okay, but you said something in the middle of that kind of interesting where... authenticity is an anchor for them. Right. It's this pillar, authenticity. My question for you, as it's going to relate to Hunger Games, is it authenticity at the expense of morality? And here's where I'm going with that. Even in Titanic, I get it, man. She's being oppressed. You referenced Billy Zane. If you have not seen the photos from Billy Zane as Marlon Brando, have you seen this show?
No, I haven't.
Billy Zane playing Marlon Brando in the biopic. Dude, Google it ASAP. Look at the images of this dude as Marlon Brando. But anyway, she's in love with Billy Zane. Are they engaged, like to be married, or are they married?
I think they're engaged.
Either way, so they're engaged. Yeah. She's to be married. Whether we're willing to accept that that's been put on her or not, this is what's happening.
Right.
So she's now going to trade this authenticity. I'm going to live my authentic self.
Right.
Even if it means... at the cost of this sort of moral obligation here. And I know you can get to the nuanced piece of Titanic, but just bring it out to the macro for me. Like, does that mean, in terms of that cohort, our authenticity is above all and everything else is?
Yeah, they're willing to. I mean, you also think of what she's giving up. It's also the moral obligation, but she's legit giving up a comfortable future. She's going to live in a manor. She's English, right, in the movie, so... It's the early 1900s, so guaranteed she has a manor a la Downton Abbey, something like that. She's giving up that. She's giving up comfort. But what she wants is authentic, maybe romantic feelings, authentic adventure, and the unknown. Like, in her head, you can see her do the calculus of, okay, I will be comfortable, but I'm going to be sitting in this parlor bored to tears. And if I have even a political thought while people are talking, I'm not supposed to say it because of my status. Where in Jack's world... it doesn't matter. There's none of that hierarchy doesn't really exist, that she can kind of be free. And, when you think about that now, going back with, Gen Z and the Hunger Games, the visual, like, again, fighting for those resources, even though they're the ones, like, in the Hunger Games, who's creating the entertainment? It's the combatants. Right. That's a TV show basically based on them fighting for these resources.
But you know what? I'm not going to let Jack off the hook. We're going to go back for a second because Rose is the unreliable narrator. Rose is the one that's saying, "Hey, for my authenticity, I'm willing to cast off my obligations here, my moral responsibility." But then there's Jack. Man, how does Jack get on the boat, man?
Does he sneak on, or is he
right? Like, it doesn't matter. It's criminal. Is it right?
Yeah, he's,
right.
He's in the third tier.
But like, we code that as Peter Pan. Man, he's young, he's excited, right? But really, man, dude sneaks on the boat, breaks the law, gets on there. Variety is the spice of life, the uncertainty of it, but it's ultimately to his doom, man. And you bring that all the way back now to where it ends with the Hunger Games. And the connection, the correlation I'm going for here is this mind state, right? Just this idea, man, that we're going to embrace authenticity and trade off these moral obligations. And look what it culminates in terms of the Hunger Games. And I just think it's a fascinating way, Jordan, to look at this current cohort, Generation Z, again, ages 12 to 27, 75 million of them. And what we're really digging into based on these two films is not only that philosophical mindset that they carry, but also how that has now intersected with the world and where they find themselves currently in 2024.
Right, and then with Gen Z too, the visual of Jennifer Lawrence shooting the arrow at President Snow, right? So it's basically the old rising up to take on, or sorry, the young rising up to take on the old, the established power. And you can connect that to the real world, where, not just to be saying this, to be saying bookends, but there's actual real world proof of this. In the last election, we had the largest number of Gen Z candidates running and winning House seats because they're 27, so you only can be in the House, right? Where the previous generation, millennials, my generation, did not get involved, right? We kind of thought millennials have this thing of, I'm not ready yet. I don't have the wealth. I don't have the experience. We ran when we're older. I'm established. I'm a good lawyer. Now I'm 40 something. Maybe I'll run. I have things I want to change.
A little more traditional.
Right. Gen Z's like, no, I want to change things now. And I'm at the lowest tier I can get in, but I'm here because I want to be a part of the process. So they are legit, as in the Hunger Games. She takes that from the powers that be, from Snow and from the whole organization, said, no, we're not going to play your game anymore. We're going to take it from you.
Yeah.
And at least be an active participant, not something
that's
you're
funny,
watching.
man. Because if I'm born in '79, so I'm 45 years old. I'm on that tail end of Gen X. And I was raised by a stepfather who was born in 1934. So he's considered part of that kind of silent generation. So I'm raised by this guy that, you didn't question things. You followed rules. You worked hard. You waited your turn, right? But through hard work, loyalty, good things will happen. That kind of a mindset. That's sort of instilled in me. Put your head down. Pay your dues. Put your head down. Do the work. Whereas Gen Z is saying, nah.
Right.
First of all, I'm talented enough. I've got some skills, and I've got this incredible tool and these resources here to amplify what I think I know is best. So no, I'm going to act on that right now. I'm not going to wait my turn. I'm not going to be humble necessarily. I'm going to act on what I know. I've got the means to put it out there. To me, that's sort of Hunger Games,
right,
minus the arrow shot at the president. But that's the mindset,
Absolutely.
Right? That's the attitude they're bringing into it. All right, we started with those two films, man. Super cool way to frame, that particular cohort, Gen Z we're talking about, ages 12 to 27, And ultimately, why is that important, man? Because it brings us to that next big question. What do they want, man? What does Gen Z want, dude? What do you want, Gen Z?
I know. What do they want? Let's real quick, let's dive into just a little more who they are, just to kind of get a little of that, because we have those bookends, they're nicknamed the I generation.
Right.
Okay. Interesting thing about this, we said that they're a large generational group. They are actually the most racially and ethnically diverse than any other previously generation. Like the numbers
significant,
yeah,
right? Do you have breakdowns on that?
We see that. I don't have specific numbers, but we see that the numbers are way more equalized. There's not this big gap of white and this. It is spread out. It is multiracial, and that is, we as educators, you see that there's this confluence of they have different generational things that they all agree on. It's not so segmented. So
is their generation the tipping point? I mean, it only continues to diversify after that?
It should,
right?
yeah.
I mean, theoretically.
At this point, it is. At this point, it's just kind of a ever-growing thing. You're not going to stop that, because of that, their mindset is starting to not look at ethnicity as much. They don't see that the same way. And we see that in our classrooms. I see that in the classroom all the time. You have certain groups and things, but there is this general feeling of acceptance more that I, growing up in school, didn't really have. Like, if you were a little different in certain terms, like there were, I didn't see anybody getting like openly bullied or anything, but it was more of, hey, people kind of hung out with this group, where now it's just mixed. You see people from all different cliques and ways of life. Just there again, we go back to this term. It probably is going to be a phrase for this: authenticity. If they like you as a person, if you're authentic, you're in. There's none of that some background stuff that used to hang up before. So I think that's really interesting for them.
Yeah, it's way more demographically diverse. I mean, that's got to be a watershed moment for certainly the United States, but I guess we're talking just in terms of global population.
Yeah, and it affects them. It's going to affect the things they do, the way they look at things. Seeing numbers skewed all over the place. They're also on track to be the most well-educated generation ever. And what can that mean for the future? I mean, think about that. The most educated. You mentioned it. They got, they have a supercomputer in their pocket. There's a great scene from I love the show Scrubs, talking about like movies and stuff. It's a great scene in the show Scrubs where an older doctor, Dr. Kelso, is talking to a girl. Scrubs is from the early 2000s. So it's a little dated. She's using the BlackBerry. So for those younger listeners who don't know what BlackBerry is, it was a smartphone. She's using that, and he's trying to diagnose her, and she is literally Googling what he's about to say. So he's like, so you have this, and she's like, yeah, that means this. And he's like, stop. They had this information before. I mean, we'd lay in the hospital bed and just stare at the doctor, like, tell me what I need to do.
Right.
Where they can like look stuff up. So they're educated, and the college is, I mean, we get to the point, we've even seen that, when we were younger growing up, a bachelor's you get any job. Now a bachelor's is,
just barrier to entry,
right. It's similar to what associate's degree was
baseline.
for us. Yeah, you need that. We're now master's, advanced degrees.
But that's changing too.
Right.
And I think that stopped with that generation. It's another point to kind of dig in on. But you said they are not only the most demographically diverse, but they are also the most educated generation in history. Interesting.
And they have, just so much information out there they can look up, they can get into. There's studies on almost everything, and now we just have all this data for them to look into and say, hey, this is how I feel about this. Where it's not so much as, again, going to our bookend ideas, where Rose is just supposed to listen to the older generation because this is how it's done. They have so much information out there, they can go, no, I'll go find it. I'll go find how I feel about that.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying. You're now my reference point saying this, but I'm going to go look at all this.
Yeah.
And see.
And you had said something, off camera before we started that I think is worth mentioning again. It really ties into here. This idea that, they're pioneers in this, which I found like just a fascinating kind of concept. So Gen Z is pioneers in this new world, and let's kind of qualify new world. So handheld devices, iPhones specifically, social media introduced in 2010. They are a part of that new world, that zeitgeist, which I think you called them the I generation.
Yep.
So they're pioneers in that regard, and they look at us, although, and I'm talking Gen Z, baby boomers, Gen X specifically, sort of the architects of social media, of big tech, right? But they look at us as the old guard, as the old fogies. They're the pioneers, and yet we're still in this with them. So we're like objectively just watching them.
Right.
And I want to key in for a second, since we're still talking about who they are before we get to what do they want. We had also talked about, I love that book, The Martian.
Right.
And The Martian comes out, in 2010, 2011, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
Because I remember the film came out sort of not too long after with Matt Damon.
Great movie.
And I'm working as an assistant principal at this time. I'm at Maplewood High School in East Nashville, right? Gotcha. But I love The Martian. And PBL had really become just a new thing, project-based learning.
Right.
So we're doing PBLs. It's got to have some kind of anchor, event, some hook. The movie Interstellar had also just come out.
It's amazing.
So we're reading the book, The Martian. We take the kids to see Interstellar, and the project culminates in this terraforming a cacti, in a controlled environment. But it ended up being really cool. We built sets. We had kids in spacesuits. We're filming it using Google Hangout. Just like, that's my world at that time. And I just remember thinking, man, how cool is it gonna be? Remember, we're thinking pioneers for this generation. How cool is it gonna be when we send these young people to Mars, right? I'm just thinking now, this is the generation that goes to Mars. But what ended up happening in reality, in real life, we did do an incredible experiment on that generation. We just didn't send them to Mars quite literally.
No.
But what we did is we took the theoretical atmosphere, anti-gravity, all the potentially bad stuff that could happen to a developing body and brain growing up on another planet.
Right. Isolated.
And we put that in their hands.
And we're just watching.
And we stepped back and became observers to these pioneers in the largest mass experiment in humanity.
Right.
I mean, I think we could honestly say, and that's Gen Z for me. When you say who they are, and I want to put like a period on that, man, Gen Z is the largest experiment undertaken by humanity as pioneers when we stood back as observers and saw the effects of big tech and social media on their brains, on their development. How close am I on that, man?
I think you're super close because you said pioneers. I think of them a lot like pioneers or explorers, right? History teacher. And they're a lot like these explorers who left the old world. Just, hey, something's out there. And we, the older generations, are a lot like the people in the old world. We just kind of like watching them,
like on the shores.
Yeah, like hey,
don't forget to write.
I hope you come back. I don't know, but what are they going to find?
Yeah.
And again, kind of going that Hunger Games. Also, though, we're sending them out there, but we're taking a lot of the resource. Oh, you found this? Thank you, because older generations are still in charge of all the businesses and function like that. So we've literally, like you said, we put that in. The phone, social media is that new world. And almost where, the millennials are kind of the control group. We grew up without it, and we were given it. I got a cell phone, I got an actual cell phone when I was 16. The iPhone, first true, I know BlackBerrys were out there, sorry BlackBerry, but the iPhone, the first true, easy-to-use smartphone came out in 2007. So I'm a young adult, 20, right? 21. So I've lived without. I've sat at a dinner table without phones, without even the problem of a phone. But I've also now have a cell phone. So we're kind of the control. Gen Z they're called digital natives. They have never grown up without that. Like they've never had a time period without that technology.
Right.
I remember getting the internet at my house. I remember them hooking up internet. So there's a time without internet in my home.
Right.
Which is crazy to think of now. And I remember when I went from dial-up, which took forever and sounded like you were killing,
AOL, yeah.
Yeah, killing a cat in the closet, yeah.
Right.
To getting DSL, like we're super fast. And that's their world. They've never not grown up with that, with smartphones. And I think that's super interesting that's just that. But they also don't have a lot of you've seen this in classrooms. As much as they grew up with the technology, they still lack some skills, some basic skills, because it's so easy to get. They've kind of lost how to look for it. Does that make sense? Like our students are not super awesome at researching. They kind of sometimes go with the quickest thing. We've had a lot of digital literacy ideas. Like, hey, you got to know what's fake out there. But they've grown up with this, the internet as a nanny, right? And so they trust it. It is something that they're like, this is what's played me Bluey songs.
Yeah, and I think, I'm going to jump ahead here a little bit. To that point, you said they trust the internet.
Yeah.
That's fascinating because I think when you leapfrog now to today with the introduction of AI, our chat bots, young people now, even Gen Alpha who follows Gen Z, really embracing their bots.
Right.
Okay. You think of the movie like Her, other examples of that. But that generation embracing their bot, back to your point about Gen Z trusting the internet, nanny as an internet tool. Well, now Gen Alpha trusting their bot, some would say more than their parents, more than their friend groups, peers, society, etc., to the point that sooner than later, that generation makes the demand that their bot has rights.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I really think that that's kind of the slippery slope, but I'm glad you brought up Gen Z, ultimately kind of raised by the internet, nannied, if you will, which instills this sense of trust, which opens the door for Gen Alpha's like bear hugging its AI bot and says, hey, man, this thing deserves rights. Now you're into agency, so we're giving our bots agency, the ability to have access of our systems, of our computers, of our accounts.
Yep, I've curated this. Why don't you trust it? Yeah, that's
man. Scary. But it sounds like you're kind of blaming Gen Z for that, man. They opened the door.
Hey, it's kind of the way I think about it this way. Like we got the internet, but so it was a new, I don't know how I feel about you thing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like growing up. People. There are bad people. Okay, like there's some bad people you shouldn't trust, but since you're around them so much, you naturally get a trust of people, especially the ones in your circle. And that's how I feel like Gen Z looks at the internet. Like they grew up around it, so they don't see it as I should be wary all the time. It's I know there are bad actors out here, but the general concept is just like people. Like I assume it's good. Where the older generations kind of look at it and be like, like I didn't grow up with you, so are you tricking me? Is there always anything bad where they're more accepting? So I'm very curious on that to see too, if Gen Z eventually is more distrusting of AI, kind of like we were with the internet as a whole, than Gen Alpha. If Gen Alpha grabs
I think
that.
that's kind of a cool segue then into what do they want, right?
Right.
And that's I love the way you framed that, where so they embrace the internet, man. They trust the internet. Now we're seeing this evolution of the internet in the form of AI, OpenAI, ChatGPT, Claude, etc. But will Gen Z embrace AI like we already know Gen Alpha is, and everybody in terms of productivity? But we're really talking about something different, man, a little more ethereal here in how we connect, with this interface of AI. So that's a great question. Will Gen Z embrace AI, or will they reject it is a strong word. Will they be cautious, be wary of it, like previous generations with the internet? Don't believe everything you read on the internet.
Well, and you see that too, though. It's many of the media companies are being really smart, where even like Snapchat has an AI bot you can make, and you can talk to it. So if nobody's snapping you, you can legit, if you're bored.
You can snap to your bot.
Yeah, you just make
this
bot. You can
keep your streak going with your bot.
Right.
You're just streaking with yourself.
Absolutely. And you can get that. So if you're just like not getting any snaps, you can like talk to it. So that's the way of
But it affirms you.
You've
got 37,000 streaks going.
Yeah.
Keep it up.
And 54% of Gen Zers say they spend 4 or more hours on social media every day.
That feels light, man.
I think that's
underreporting, dude.
Yeah.
As somebody at 45 who is actively working to lower that screen time report that comes to me every Sunday. I just got mine, and since we're in the new media movement, I'm gonna be authentic here. So mine was an average of 2 hours and 40 minutes today. But that's me working to get it down. Like, I am kind of saying that proudly, 2 hours and 40 minutes.
It's easy.
But, it's also easy for that report to be, it was 5 hours on average this week.
It's so easy.
I mean, you have to be very top-down processing, intentional about putting it aside and all that. So that does feel underreported. But still, 54% are saying
4 or more hours, and that they love the visual media. That's their thing. So we're talking about who they are. Visual media.
They're not reading Wikipedia, man.
Right? Yeah. It's the same data suggests that their favorite social media apps are YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. So what are those? All visual. And like you said about this kind of a little side story just to prove this. My eldest son, 16 years old. Right.
Yeah.
He's on a trip right now. For some reason, his phone just dies. Not dead battery, just doesn't work. So he's like texting us from another phone and trying to figure us out. Obviously, we're not with him. He's on this trip. And he's, one of the terms here for any educators, parents, just to kind of get you up on the lingo, crashing out. That's the new hot term. Crashing out is basically.
Oh, right.
He crashed out, or he's crashed. So he's like, I'm about to crash out. I don't have my phone. Like, he's legit freaked out.
So let's just put that in context. Again, I'm Gen X, man. So he's so frustrated, so just, I'm going to maybe do something reckless.
Yeah, just like feeling frustrated.
Lose it.
And he literally says to us, hey, could you contact his sister to contact his friend who has his login for Snapchat, and he said, so he can keep my streaks alive. Like, this is top of mind for him.
That's
like,
what's important.
Yeah,
man.
And so we go through this opera of, we reach out to his sister who's at a friend's house, like, hey, can you contact this person to keep his streaks alive? My wife and I both look at each other like, why are we doing this?
Right.
But it's like, we don't want him super stressed. So it's
okay, because I was going to ask why, but that's it.
So it's just like, hey, if we can give him this little nugget.
All right.
We don't really
What's
understand.
it cost us to help him out?
So she's like, I reached out. He doesn't have his password. He doesn't have his password anymore. And, at this point, I'm like, hey, we're not doing this. What's your password? Reaching out. And
tedious.
But our daughter goes, could you just text the kid's mom if you don't want me to keep doing it and giving it? And we're like, we're not texting a parent a password to give to her kid
Agreed.
to do these streaks.
Lunacy.
And so we're like, we're just done. And our daughter, but she via text understood this whole conundrum, and she's like, man, another young phrase, he's cooked. Like, she got that losing his streak would be that stressful. She's like, oh, he's cooked. I feel so bad. And I'm like, what is happening here?
You dropped 2 big gems on anybody that's listening that might be older, Gen Xers like myself. So you dropped He's going to crash out, write code as a
just frustrated.
He's frustrated. May do something outrageous out of that frustration, and then he's cooked, like done. It's over. It's over. Charbroiled, man. Well done.
Yeah.
Game over.
Being older generation, I like to mess with my kids because I try to learn, like my students, I try to learn these phrases and then use them almost in dad joke way, just so they're like, ugh. So I did a joke. I was like, hey, what did Joan of Arc and the kid who forgot to study for their finals both say? And they were like, what? I teach history, and they're like, I'm cooked, because they burnt her alive in her armor. And all my kids rolled their eyes. One girl was like, why are you the way that you are? And I was like, I have no idea. But that's their life.
Rest in peace, Joan of Arc.
Right? And these streaks, I've seen it in my classroom. I've seen it with my kids. It's just like literally me and you have a streak going, so we got to snap each other every day. It's a picture of the ceiling tiles.
It's
a picture of the forehead. It's not like a meaningful, like, hey, what's up, man?
But it's this faux connectivity.
Yeah, and that's what it is. And that's that digital visual world they're in.
And that a little bit rabbit hole here, but is that part of this idea for Gen Z that if it's not posted, I don't exist, or like if I don't have a digital footprint, I'm not a part of it. So it's a little bit of FOMO, fear of missing out. I've got to let them know that I'm here, right? Here's my streak of the ceiling,
right? Yeah,
as just ridiculous as that is, but trying to empathize a little bit here. If my whole modus operandi is if you didn't take a picture, it didn't happen. Right. And then I'm gonna post it because I exist. Without that, I don't exist.
Yep. I actually have in my book, the 2 backpacks have a chapter, the good, the bad, the ugly of social media. Right. Yeah. There's a phrase in there where a girl got her phone taken away, and she literally said, she's like, if I can't post online, do I even exist? Like that exact phrase is in the book. And they talk about and I talk about in there that they have these 2 personalities. They have a digitally curated
persona,
that they have to keep up.
Avatar.
I tell a story in the book about I was at the mall one time, and I was just kind of chilling because I was like, I'm done walking around. I'm gonna sit here, just chill, people watch. And I saw this like Gen Z girl sitting at a table by herself, and she just looked despondent. She's doing the whole like head on the table, just holding the phone up, and just like almost like laying there. They're like you're laying in bed, and then all of a sudden she's scrolling, and then she just like perks up, looks around her, gets her background, and then smiles, bright, beautiful smiles, takes a picture, and then immediately back down. And I was like, that was just 2 different people. I literally saw that happen.
And your ability to kind of, voyeuristically see that in real time, like her code switch almost between her online persona and what is it, IRL, like in real life. Yeah. This is happening.
She was miserable at the mall. Her friends maybe weren't there.
But
I have a whole story about I sent some students to go ask her because I was just like curious because I was like working on these ideas. So like I got a whole backstory, but her friends weren't there because they didn't go. She like skipped this thing her friends were doing. So she was literally by herself, so she was kind of miserable. But in her digital life, she was showing like, I'm at the mall, look at me smiling, I'm here, you guys should be here. And that's not what she was feeling at all. And I think that's a big part of the digital world where you have to decode this. And again, which is interesting because what we were just talking about for Gen Z, authenticity.
So we've, and moving into, again, deeper into what do they want, they want this authenticity, but they're mired in this trap of in real life versus online persona expectations that are now put on us online. Remember, this is the generation that in terms of Titanic, we're running from societal expectations. We're running from certainty. But now, and man, I love this. This brings me into like the mindset of Fight Club. I'm a movie buff guy. So, I love the whole idea of Fight Club being, anarchy. We're against the system.
I am Jack's withering despair.
Right. But it culminates into shaved heads, ubiquity, everyone saying the same message. So now bringing that back to even Gen Z, God love them, you start with Rose running from certainty, running from that kind of oppression and expectation, to now I am making sure that my online persona matches the expectation of what should be there, even though I'm really feeling this way.
And more specifically, matching the expectation of the group I want to accept me. You know what I mean? So you have these little digital, these communities, like
these tribes.
You want to be like a vibrant, a female. But I'm cute. Look, I'm fun. You should like me. Or if you want to be a, kind of a more anti-hero type, like I'm at the mall just watching all these people spend their money. It's whatever you want it to make it.
And now through Pandora's box, those tribes, fed by an algorithm that once you dip your toe into it, and you're hyper connected here, isn't that
that's
just
where you live? Yeah,
and where you
funnels
stay.
you further, and that's kind of going to the Hunger Games.
Okay, that gets us all the way there. Yeah. There we go, man.
And part of Gen Z,
we did it, bro. We went from rows
natural
to then you find your tribe where it's kind of kill or be killed in terms of carving out this box, this grid that's unique for me,
right?
And
and here's my people who live there too. But Gen Z, as much as they're part of it, the older version of Gen Z, they're seeing that, and that's what they're trying to change and break away. Don't put me in the, let me decide if we want to be there. That's why they're getting into politics and stuff, to set the policy to where they're not just unwilling actors in this, they're policy drivers.
Okay.
And they want that. So let's real quick go into what does Gen Z actually want out of life.
Talk to me.
So according to how Gen Z feels about life and the future, in charge from Ed Week, interesting article from Caitlin Peets just here this past summer, so just came out, so really fresh. Gen Z, they tend to be independent. So from their work life, what do they want as we're growing up, getting to work? They're independent, they're competitive, they're hardworking and pragmatic. We often don't think of them as hardworking. And here's the reason I think that. We look at them through our framework of earning your due. You put your head down, you work hard, and then most millennials, Gen X, I think we expect kind of financial security and success you start to tap it late 20s, or by mid 30s, you should, if you're on the pathway you've chosen, you should be comfortable, right? You should be getting the things you want. Gen Z says, no, now. I'm 19. I'm creating. That's why you see so many of them trying to dabble in
But Gen
creation.
Z was also, in terms of a cohort, and this may have been obviously when they were kids, but they were kind of doing okay. If you think of that cohort starting in 96, 97, and, the recession doesn't hit till 2009. Right? So it's kind of like, hey, for the first decade, man, things were going pretty well. And then it just crashes in your face, and your world may or may not have literally changed after that. Certainly your economic situation may have changed. So back to that generation and what they want, man, heck yeah, I want it right now, because tomorrow is not promised. Certainly our economic future, school shootings, we can go there. I mean, listen, everything could change on the drop of a dime tomorrow. Man, I want it, and I want it not now, I want it right now. I mean, that's the Gen Z, I think, mindset that we're dealing with currently. Yeah,
well, and you think about this, and let's think of the older group that entering in the workforce. We had the recession 09, okay? That was the millennial hiccup, because we were kind of in our just getting in the world, or just had been in the world a little bit, and then housing prices dropped, so buying a house, selling a house.
I lost my job in the recession. Right? I mean, that's what got me into education, was the recession.
It was awful. Well, going back to Titanic, the iceberg for Gen Z was COVID.
Ooh.
They were about to inherit this booming, beautiful economy that was just ushering them in. Here's the world, baby.
It wasn't the recession.
Go out and get it.
It was COVID.
So for them,
millennials, recession, right?
Yeah, for them, their iceberg was COVID, and it just blew everything up. I mean, they literally, as much as we're talking about, hey, they're digital natives. We said that. They're also kind of forced to be. For a year plus, that's what we lived in. I taught classes via Zoom. Right. Trying to teach this many classes. I don't even know how lower middle school and elementary teachers did it.
Yeah.
Because it was hard enough with basically adults. But that's their thing. So when they go in the workforce, they're about to get this, especially this older group here, because I was just 4 years ago. So you're talking about 27-year-olds. They're 23. They're graduating college, going in this workforce, and
Boom.
Yeah, jobs are gone.
No job or
Industries
remote job now.
And
there's all different ways to look at that. Either you lost your job, or there's no jobs as I'm entering, or I was working a job and then they told me to work from home, so I got to figure out that situation. Or flash forward, now they're mandating that we come back, but hey, I've just got my situation figured out over here. Now you're
forcing me to come back when I've been this productive at home.
At home, when you forced me to go home. Right?
Yeah.
And then I proved that, man, productivity can actually skyrocket, can work here while also meeting these other needs that I have.
Yep. Yeah. So it's a harrowing thing. We see this in our students. You see younger kids from that time period. They struggle to social issues. So that means because of that, they're very career focused, because anyone around those peripheries, right? Our youngest Gen Z members are 12. Okay. Our oldest 27. So around that periphery of that time, about to enter the workforce, in the workforce, entering it, they just kind of blows up. So they're very entrepreneurial. And that's why you see all these businesses coming out. Gen Z, like I said, they're entering politics younger. They didn't like those policies. So 4 years ago, the 23-year-olds are now 27, and we've had more 27-year-olds enter our House of Representatives, state houses, and national, federal house than we've ever had.
Talk to me about these entrepreneurial pieces. Like, do we have an idea of what sectors? Is this mostly gig economy stuff? I'm hearing so much about that. Let's just tie it to industry real quick.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, job force, labor market. I do a lot of work as a consultant with industry partners, connecting industries to schools to bridge that gap, right?
Yeah.
Ultimately, to fill this massive hemorrhage of people leaving the workforce, baby boomers retiring, 10,000 people a day, young people just literally not choosing some of these paths anymore because of things like the gig economy, right? Or being a task rabbit. I'm just going to be an Uber Eats driver. I'm going to work for Kroger delivering the stuff. I mean, I just see this kind of thing happening more and more. But what it does do is give Gen Zers this incredible flexibility and autonomy to also do other things while meeting these basic needs in a gig economy kind of setting. I mean, am I close on that?
Yeah.
Or what are these entrepreneurial things, man?
A lot of it
Gen
is
Z
digital.
doing?
It's creation.
Content creators.
Content creator. I mean, you can talk about anything now if you just get that little thing. A lot of the younger ones, though, they see that and they see these young people their age getting famous. They don't understand how much, a lot of them don't understand how much work it is. But once they get there, they're willing to put that in. And they do. There's younger clothing brands we've ever had before. It's these small startup that just have a personal meaning to these kids, and these young people, and that's starting to go. So you're getting these more niche little things, just the things we would most likely go.
And because
look for.
You no longer have to really mass market to people, right, in order to be successful.
Absolutely.
Artists before creators. I mean, they had to be so mass appealing,
right?
But now you can really bring that to your niche.
Absolutely.
And as long as you have the right marketing strategy, platform, etc. I mean, theoretically, man, you could pull this off.
Absolutely.
And meet this niche right here. Carve your lane. That's what Gen Z is figuring out.
Hey guys.
Sorry.
Hey, it's Tommy back here.
Hi, Tommy.
This is one thing I want to chime in with talking about the gig economy is
absolutely, man.
Is you got to think about what they value,
Yeah.
And their values are very, very different. They value free time. They value their own time more than they value money and possessions.
Yes.
And it's like the voice from God.
They do, yeah. Tommy Ruth, everybody.
And that's why they choose a gig economy. They know how much money they need to make their rent, their bills, to have a little pocket money, and to travel.
Yes.
And that's where their heads are at.
Yeah, absolutely. Like on here it says they tend to be anxious and mindful of their future, and as a result, they're willing to work for that. But they also are wanting, again, to have, like you said, their values. If you value travel, again, millennial generation to speak of them, we would work to travel when our kids are gone. That was my whole grow up. Oh, you'll get to go do fun stuff with your kids. They're like, no, I want to travel. So they'll do, as Tommy said, gig economy stuff to be able to travel now, and they're completely happy.
Yeah.
If they're, they like he said, I can make rent.
Now,
I can get
right,
bills.
because this is the same generation that ran from certainty and security. And I'm going to code that as Social Security or any kind of pension plan,
right?
That you might get with a very stable government job or something like that.
And they've seen those blow up too.
They've seen those blow up. They're hearing the narrative of this large boomer generation is going to take all the Social Security. We're not going to have any anyway.
Yeah.
So I think that I wonder, though, I would be in terms of that value, what they value, why they lean towards the gig economy. Man, they value, freedom. They value autonomy. But and go with me here. If the autonomy or the freedom is, hey, let's go on more trips. We want experiences. We want moments. All right, cool. Well, then we go on those. But I'm documenting all of that so I can post all of it for content creation. I don't know, man. It still feels like this vicious loop or cycle.
And let me chime in on that part.
Yeah,
Ryan,
come on, man. Bring it in.
Totally.
Think about what you valued at 16.
Okay.
What was the most important thing to you at 16?
At 16 years old, man, I had to have a car.
I had to have a driver's license and a car.
I got to get my car.
All right, so these kids
don't.
that's not a priority for them. I mean, I've hired so many 18-years-olds that have to get rides to work because I hadn't even got my driver's license yet.
Right.
And think about how that translates down the road. They're not moving out of their houses.
They don't go anywhere.
They're not going off to college. They're staying close to home. Once they are out of college, they're staying at home because one, it's just too expensive.
Right.
It is, yeah.
And two, it's like
but that's
there's no innate hurry to get out and be your own person.
Especially when you've got the aging baby boomer demographic. And that's a massive, somebody find me a stat on that. I know it's 75 million for Gen Z, but baby boomers, massive. My mother's in that generation, right? So she's retired, has a little condo, essentially living by herself. Well, a lot of this generation, Gen Z, man, they can stay at home because they've got the baby boomer grandparent or parent that either needs that kind of care or support or just has the extra space. So you're right, they have found this ready-made condition to not have to be mobile, to not have to be upward trajectory. Man, I can stay here. I mean, again, to me, it's against type on that safety and security piece, but yet it allows me to embrace these other values that I have.
Right.
It's still ironic, though, man, when we're talking about freedom and autonomy, bro, and you may or may not be living with your parents.
Right.
I mean, so there's hypocrisy. And there's that idea, and I don't mean to get like pseudo-psychological here, man, but there's that whole piece of, when you live externally, but internally you're living a different way.
Right.
Back to authenticity and how that makes people feel. And where I'm going with that is, dude, we haven't even touched on mental health crisis in Gen Z.
Oh, yeah.
And how that skyrocketed with that generation, and probably no turning back after that.
Right.
But, the book that I've just read most recently, The Anxious Generation, I mean, that speaks to it and leads with that Mars example. I mean, come on, man. To me, that gets into we may be outwardly persona projecting one thing, but, inwardly something else is happening. I don't know. It's just fascinating.
Yeah,
man.
they put a high priority on mental health, like in life in general.
There it is, man. The Anxious Generation, that book right there.
It's great.
Jonathan Haidt. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that the right way. Haidt. But The Anxious Generation, man, epic book.
Yeah.
But love the way it starts off with that whole Mars analogy.
Absolutely. And, like you said, mental health, they put a lot of priority into that treatment. They're open to therapy, where other generations, especially males, never go to therapy. They're
that's been
totally
a game changer. For
medication. And they toss around therapy speak. And I've heard this with my students. They talk about attachment styles and cognitive, like they know this stuff.
Savvy.
Yeah. And so, but they're open to that. And you often wonder, being that open, it's a good and a bad thing. Like, I think it's good. Like, they're the generation that basically kind of came up with and has popularized like the idea of toxic masculinity. To where like, hey, and that's again going to the Titanic. We're not going to live this way. Like, I'm a dude. I'll cry if I need to.
Yeah.
I'm not Wyatt Earp. I'm not going to sit there.
Bro, I'll wear a dress at the award show if I want to.
Yeah, it's my.
And
how
still
do
be
I
straight
feel
up,
authentic? Yeah.
Heterosexual, man. But that's what I'm choosing to wear. The gender identity and all that stuff kind of comes into play. Yeah.
Yeah, they're definitely more open to. I mean, they're identified. Their less traditional view of sexuality, kind of what you're talking about. In 2021, 20.8% of Gen Z identified as LGBTQ plus, compared to only 10.5% of millennials. So that's a big jump. A 10% jump. They tend to think, and when they're thinking about that, they tend to think what's right is what doesn't hurt anyone. So they're more of a a feeling focused,
empathetic.
Yeah, where older generations, because some of the things they've dealt with it's more Machiavellian, like, the means justify the end. So maybe this group, this might hurt some people, but
right, or what's best for the greater good, may have to be at the sacrifice of a few. Whereas this generation, with this empathic scope, this empathic pillar of responsibility, is not going to allow anyone to suffer or get hurt.
That's why you see, I think you're getting this big, and that's why they're joining our government at such high numbers, is you're getting this big collide, this big battle between these ideas, because they're like, no, like they're more inclusive, because like we said, that ethnically diverse, sexually diverse. So they see as what's right is what doesn't hurt anybody. So they're like, no, they should have rights. So they're more involved.
So then,
in
look, man, answer this question for me. And you're currently in the classroom,
right?
I mean, you're a public school teacher, high school, and you teach a broad range of intelligence levels, from AP classes to standard stuff. So here's the question that I want answered, right now, as it relates, to Gen Z. We talk about them being fiercely independent. We talk about them being inclusive, this loose idea of gender roles, toxic masculinity, all this stuff. You even coined, you're saying they coined that kind of ideology of hugely popularized toxic masculinity. I think of Schwarzenegger and Stallone from my era, just, right? But, and here's the question that I want answered. It's not unfair to say that there is more polarization and tribalism on social media, certainly.
Absolutely.
Right? Let's just kind of stay there. There's more tribalism, polarization, toxicity there. But isn't that their world?
Right. It is. And I think it's come into, like you said, they're the pioneers. So they're the generation that's trying this out, where you had very clear, Gen X, very clear roles. You were, just talking about sexuality. If you were a guy, you dressed a certain way, you acted a certain way.
It's very patriarchal, yeah, for sure.
And then millennials, still that started to tip a little bit, but still kind of clear. Where they're all about that authenticity. If that's how you feel in this moment, be it. But there's still segments on social media to where you do get this tribalism of that, because that's how I feel, this is how I feel. So everybody's kind of allowed to be what they are.
Because how you feel comes at the expense of someone else's feelings.
Right.
I can't accept that.
So
if we're going back to that, right? Where, hey, I'm inclusive. Hey, diversity.
Right.
Have your own opinion as long as it doesn't offend me. Can I use that word?
Yeah.
Is it?
I think
could it be
that's
an offense?
a
Not
big
even
part
physical,
of that's the
but
older generations pushing into. Again, that thing. I guarantee we're all human. So there are obviously Gen Zers who are like, nope, that's wrong. You know what I mean? Like they still feel that because it's part of being raised a certain way. However, but I think it's a lot of it. The older generations are also on there too, and they're kind of pushing against that, saying, why no? Like, don't wear a dress. Like Timothy Chalamet. I think he wore a blouse thing. That dude, he's got no problem getting ladies. But that's just what he was comfortable with. We're older generation, like,
Which is only funny, man. It's old hat because Dennis Rodman was wearing like a wedding dress, in the 90s. So I mean,
it's not,
it feels old hat, but right, you've got these temperatures that flare and all of that kind of stuff.
I'm a big Chicago Bears fan. Our new quarterback, Caleb Williams, paints his fingernails because his mom worked in a nail salon, and that's the way he got to hang out with her. So she'd go and she'd do his nails while he talked to her.
Right.
So he still does that to us like an homage. And there's a bunch of people out there like, he can't play quarterback. So you get that. But where some young people are like, nah, man, do you paint your fingernails?
Right.
And so you get that tribalism. And I was just, kind of from that, you kind of see this divide of the generations. The other day, on Christmas break, just kind of chilling, picking up, I watched the new Netflix film Carry On with Jason Bateman. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I have not seen it, but getting good reviews, man.
Yeah,
People are loving
it's
that movie.
definitely interesting. Love Jason Bateman. He plays this terrorist who's in the main character's ear, kind of like the movie Phone Booth, if you remember that.
Yeah.
With Colin Farrell.
So is he not on screen a lot?
He eventually
gets
gets on there, but it's mostly his voice, which he has a great voice for that because he's not like scary. He's just like,
Yeah.
And he's there, and the hero's Taron Egerton, and so he's just a TSA agent working. And at one point, so they're it's like, hey, you got to do this. It's going to happen in a few minutes. I'm watching you. So at some point they just start chatting, like he's in his ear. So he's just like, so tell me, they start talking. And Jason Bateman is talking about how our main character, who's younger, who's Gen Z, older Gen Z, is asleep. He's like, you're asleep. You're afraid to advance yourself in your career because you want everything. You're this way. And he says this, which I truly feel like encapsulates the split between Gen Z and Gen X.
Okay.
Because that's kind of what Jason Bateman's
This is
from.
What Bateman is saying to the protagonist.
He says, your generation is so taken with the concept of authenticity that you will not take a bite unless you know it's the perfect hashtag real thing, real coffee, real pizza, real bagel.
Okay.
So it's kind of an interesting look at that as
you won't even try it.
Right, because you need to know, where other generations are like, you know what, maybe this isn't what I wanted to 100% do, but at least it's getting me here. He's saying, you guys, you're still doing, and TSA agents are awesome and heroes, but in this movie, he wanted to be a cop, but he wasn't. So he's like, you won't even try that out now. He failed once. He's like, you won't even go back because you're so afraid that it may not be where your heart's going. He's like, so now you're just stuck here.
Well, what I'm hearing is anxiousness, though.
Right.
Like,
And
your generation is so anxious. Is this the real deal? Will I be judged on this? Can I post this? That's what I'm hearing. I haven't seen the movie, but when I'm thinking of him using that phrase against that generation, yeah, you're so anxious to do anything.
Right.
Because you don't know the answer or the authenticity of it. It doesn't have, the seal, the 9.6 and its grading. You can't see the company that did it.
Yep.
Right. Or it doesn't have the stitched logo that tells you.
Yeah, and that's why they're in work. They're more they more are into their potential for growth and salary and benefits than they are branding. Because they want the perfect thing for them to where, if I would have got called up from, some company, Google calls me. I was like, we want you to be the education guru. I would have been like, heck yeah, I'm going to work at Google. To where they're like, okay, what's the room for growth? What's the salary? Yeah, you're Google. Cool. Evil empire. I want what's good for me. Where I just would have been like, Google, yes, I made it.
Which is why I think, and man, I'm proud to say I was a part of this movement, kind of on the front end. But we've seen this dramatic shift. Back to your thing with education, in students choosing a vocational career path.
Right.
Students opting out of post-secondary 4-year universities, that bachelor degree, homeostasis standards. Now, this idea that with this exiting workforce and these skilled trades that can pay so lucratively if done the right way, this could be the thing for me. And we're starting to see Gen Z kind of parlay or leverage its social media savviness to create, these new plumbing niches or welding niches, or artisan carpentry niches that they can do themselves.
They can curtail that.
Skilled based, right? Tangible, experiential, leveraging the power of this to brand myself. Right? Not support some other dude's brand.
Absolutely.
Necessarily.
I'm not a wheel or a cog.
A cog in this wheel that supports some CEO who's not doing any work. I'm putting in the work, I'm busting tail, but I'm also organizing the content, broadcasting it, and receiving 100% of the residuals.
I'm making the money and charting my path until I don't want to.
That's Gen Z.
Yes. Where in the past we just worked, we were the cog, and just went along and hoped. How many we talk about movies, how many movies are like the guy hopes he gets the promotion? I hope I get the promotion. I work so hard. He doesn't get it. They don't want a world with that. There's that a part of that anxiety. I don't want to worry about that. I'm going to mold everything to where I'm the one pushing the button if I get an advance.
Bringing this all the way back to education. In education we deal with standardized testing. I mean, it's just one of the warts on this thing that we all have to deal with. And I've always kind of wondered, as we all grew up with standardized testing, I certainly did. I don't remember it having the kind of pressures that it does now as a student taking it, but it was something that we did. I grew up in Indiana. We took the I-STEP test.
Yeah.
So I remember bubbling it in and all that. but I always kind of wondered. I didn't like doing that. I don't know that any generation has embraced it.
I love a standardized test.
But it's only gotten worse, right, in terms of the anxiety and all that we hear in the 501(c)(4)s and all of that, the 504s. But now that we're getting this generation that's coming into education as educators and now going from teachers to even administrators, at what point do they outright reject?
Right. Where they just
Man,
say,
we hated doing that. This is how it made us feel. And it's still pretty palpable. Triggering would be another word that they like to use. It's still very triggering. So how could I even put that on a kid? I mean, this is where I wonder kind of how close we are to some of that. But I think the front end of that, the tip of that spear is kids saying, you know what? Man, I'm just not interested in college.
Right.
And for that matter, the ACT necessarily. But I am interested in this thing over here where I'm using these tools to create this thing, and there's learning involved and certifications. And now that does interest me.
I'm choosing all this.
But I'm choosing that. So that pendulum, though, is starting to swing back this way a little bit. And I think it goes to what you said, man. I'm no longer going to be a cog in this company's wheel, support this CEO who I never see, don't believe he wrote that mission and vision, but I'm the one breaking my back over here. I'm going to do that for me.
Well, and who, if does a major scandal, is going to get a $10 million golden parachute?
Yeah.
Where I've come in late 3 times, they're going to fire me and get me nothing.
This is why I think, man, and I've really felt this way, for the last couple of years, that the game is changing in terms of industry in a massive way, where you are now going to have, I don't care how big your company is necessarily, dude, you're going to have an entire department, big or small, that's dedicated specifically to connecting with young people, right? I think NIL, name, image, likeness, and the way that's impacted sports, college sports, all the way down to like even high school level sports. The way that is changing things. I think we see the same thing happens in terms of this labor market, where companies have entire departments that are specific designated to connect with young people, find out their aptitudes, what they're interested in, how we can mentor them, connect with them. This is sort of gets into the work of what I do.
Absolutely.
But I think it's so true, man, that if you're not doing that as a company, as an industry leader right now, man, you're missing out on those boats. It's those companies that got in and had a website first, those companies that figured out how to leverage social media first, the Joe Rogans of the world that figured out how to crack the podcast code first by breaking it up into these little segments and pushing them out on social media. It's those companies that create those departments, dude, that interface with kids, that become successful in getting those kids as employees, because they're going to listen, dude. They're going to build the relationships, which creates that belonging, unlocks efficacy. Now I'm listening to kids. Well, here's what dude's good at, but I'm also understanding who he is as a person and what he wants. And hey, we can offer that to you over here. Let me show you. And now, since we know each other on a first name basis, you're not a cog in this wheel, man. Come on, let me show you how you add value. We can fill your cup with purpose. Dude, that's the new game-changing approach to getting young people into the labor force.
Absolutely. And I think that we're at a tipping point with this generation, because like you said, even in college, I mean, the older generations, the newer generations, they're kind of coming to a head in these things like NIL. We have athletes who are literally deciding where they're going based on the opportunities to them, because they're nowhere in the past. I mean, in the past, if you played college football, you would play through a dislocated shoulder because maybe you need a good game to get to the draft, and that was, you were willing to give that all for 4 years for that team. Now they're like, they play for a year. Oh, I can get a better opportunity here because I can set my own path. It looks like, to older generations, a lack of loyalty,
selfishness, loyalty, self-grandizing, all of that. But it's so easy for me to say, really though, dude? And I'm 45, but it's like, really? These are the same people that sacrifice their youth, their health,
their bodies,
on the front end to be essentially just jettisoned when the career is over.
Yeah.
And you want to talk to me about loyalty?
Yeah.
You want to talk to me about having chronic disability, pain, long stint, man, CTE, dude.
Oh, man, it's terrifying.
And you want to talk to me about loyalty?
Right, yeah.
So I don't suffer those arguments, man.
I totally get
very
it.
well.
I'm with you on that, where you can see their argument, but it is scary because, again, they're a generation that's grabbing that and vocally asking for it, like demanding it.
Yeah.
To where in the past it was something you got when you earned, like, oh, when I get a little older and I can go into politics, I can change things. That way it's not hard, but I gotta keep quiet, know my place. They're like, no, hey, I'm 17. You're gonna make money because I'm gonna catch a lot of great passes. You, the college football, sphere.
Right.
So I'm gonna go where I can make some money. Because as soon as I get hit in the knee and I'm done, you're never going to talk about me again.
That's right.
And so it's that agency.
I give it to young people for that one, man.
And so that's
good
who they are in their life and they want. So we mentioned that movie. So I think it's a good time to kind of do a new little segment, a little fun, right?
Come on. I've been looking forward to this.
Yeah. So we have with mention of a new movie, Ryan. It's time for our pop catalog pop quiz. All right, so we're both movie buffs.
Oh, love it.
And comic buffs. Yep. And popcatalog.com is an amazing place to visit, to find or sell any collectible you could think of. They have original movie posters, DVDs, Blu-rays, VHSs, Laserdisc, CDs, vinyls, action figures, and video games of every era and system you could think of, and comic books and other art. Popcatalog.com. Elevate your collection.
Hey, and I gotta give a big shout out to popcatalog.com too. I'm of course a big movie guy. I love vintage movie posters. That's my thing.
Yeah.
Like I love movie posters, man. Those 27 by 40s. I love the big ones, the theatrical ones. So popcatalog.com. Growing up, man, I loved a movie called Red Dawn.
Great movie.
All right, so I grew up in the Cold War era. This is the Patrick Swayze version. Directed by John Milius, who made Conan, who co-wrote Apocalypse Now. So this idea of teenagers, battling the communists.
Right.
That was just me. So I end up being able to score, man, for a really good price, an original, vintage Red Dawn poster. And back in the day, they used to fold them, man. That was part of what they did. So, it's got the folds in it. I've now got that mounted on the wall. But popcatalog.com, dude, when I tell you their collection of vintage movie posters, bro, is as deep as anywhere I've ever seen.
That's awesome.
But they're on socials, man. They've got a YouTube as well. But check out popcatalog.com. If you're a movie fan, you just love pop culture, records, vinyls, laser discs. They've got all that physical media, dude, which is something we haven't really touched on in this episode yet. Maybe we get to that later. But I'm a physical media guy,
right?
So man, they've got all your physical media needs, man. Check out, and big shout out to my man Noah Brooks, CEO, popcatalog.com. He's a good dude. He's a nerd just like us, man. His wife's in education as well. Oh. So, yeah, she's a librarian, man. So it's just really cool story that they got. Popcatalog.com. Cool.
Yeah.
Hit me with the...
Nerds Unite, man.
Yeah,
thank you for popcatalog.com for being part of the show. So our Pop Catalog pop quiz question of the day is this. Earlier, we discussed how Gen Z is very visually drawn to social media apps. So which of the following do you think they use the most? We got A, TikTok, B, Instagram, C, YouTube, or D, Snapchat. What you got?
Yeah. Just after we've talked, you're saying visual, but I'm thinking new. My guess is going to be TikTok, man. TikTok is
TikTok.
All,
Tommy, you got a guess
back
back
the
there?
rage.
Is he thinking of something back
No,
there?
I'm sorry. We had to unmute. TikTok, man.
You got TikTok. So both of you have TikTok. All right. Cool. So Pop Catalog answer. According to Social Media Today, using data from the Pew Research Center, so it's all high-end data. For Gen Z members 18 to 29, so it's not even our youngest, it's just a good skew of it.
Okay.
They threw 29 in there just to get that age group.
Yeah.
The top site is YouTube.
YouTube.
Coming in at 93%. Shout out to YouTube, all the people out there watching.
Yeah, man.
With
YouTube.
almost every major...
The nano generation,
Yeah. Almost every major Gen Z trend is coming from gamers or trendsetters on YouTube. And Instagram came in second
Hold
at
on,
78%.
Tommy, leave that up here for a second here. Instagram came in second. Sorry about that.
At 78%. Snapchat at 65%. And TikTok at 62%. Would you think, I thought TikTok would be the highest
Me too.
as well because they're just always on that. But I think it's because they also learn stuff off there. They get episodes off there. It's just kind of a place to go to YouTube for everything.
Yeah,
So
and it just reminds me of when I think of YouTube, as there was that time when we were calling it, micro credentialing or the nano generation.
Yeah.
So this idea that they didn't need school, they had their own. Their school
Right.
was YouTube.
Look stuff up.
So if I want to learn something, I'm not going to listen to this dude and
Yeah.
hear his way. I'm going to go to this video and fast forward to the part that I want to learn from.
Yep.
But so I guess in the end, it's not shocking.
Yeah, visual and I mean, they're all the same. Instagram, they get the pictures. Snapchat, you have to have somebody communicate with that. Where TikTok, 62%. I'd probably like to see TikTok. I think will shoot up here, but with this group, it is still YouTube, because YouTube also has the YouTube Shorts, which I think kind of for especially the younger group, they just kind of do everything there if they want. So super interesting. So popcatalog.com, pop quiz, most used social media site was YouTube. Super interesting.
Tommy, can you pull up that pop catalog just one more time, man? That was cool, dude. You had those images up, and you just got a quick kind of look at what. Just look at that, dude. So
beautiful Sopranos.
You get into like this may even be physical media like DVDs and stuff like that. But he had the posters up earlier. Look at those original movie posters.
Look at that Mouse Speed by Tommy. Good job, Tommy.
And he's on it. But look at that. Go
Braveheart.
There you go, man. Look, like Fear and Loathing, in Las Vegas, Johnny Depp.
Oh, yeah.
115. But these are vintage, man. Again, these are all vintage, dude.
From the time period, yeah.
Yeah, man.
I saw the David Lynch Dune on there.
60s, 70s, 80s, bro. Come on. Your boy Paul Schrader's Cat People. Look at that Mad Max vintage, bro. How much is that one going for? $785, dude. But that's vintage Mad Max, Mel Gibson. That's a bad exploitation poster right there. I love that. So just check out their site, man. It is thick. It is thorough. It's for collectors, but they've got price ranges, man. Everybody can get involved in this.
But you can sell on there as well. So if you have a collection, you can sell on there.
That's
contact
right. They
them.
buy a ton of stuff. Yeah. So, Granny's basement, man, or attic, you've got the collection of DVDs or old cartridges you want to get rid of. Man, this dude buys all of it. Popcatalog.com.
So hit them up.
So YouTube, dude, is Gen Z's.
That's their go-to according to the Pew Research Center. So it's super fascinating, but it's all about that visual. Right, they want to be able to see it.
Yeah,
it's about, and it's being, again, like you said, to be able to skip stuff. The chapters that YouTube now does, where you can skip that, and they find it for everything. So where we used to, I learned a bunch of stuff by following my dad around and hoping I didn't screw up, because he's out there working. I'm like, do you need this yet? He's like, no. They go by watching videos. Yeah, like they know how to change a faucet because they watch it. To where I
watch the YouTube.
I know YouTube exists. Sometimes I'll think of that, but I'll still call my dad first. Like, hey, how do you do this?
Right.
And he always likes to make the joke of like, hey, hold the phone closer so I can see it. Which now we can just FaceTime. We could do that, but that was the joke of like, I'm not there, I can't see.
Yeah, and I think probably one of the reasons why I went to TikTok as my first choice. Having conversation with our producer Tommy, he made the point that. Young people aren't using Google to search anymore. In fact, what's the fastest way to tell a young person that you're old? Google it.
Yeah.
Man, it's like, who uses Google, bro?
All right, I had the young kid term for that too, just to help out our older listeners. It's search it up.
Search it up.
Yeah, that's their kid. Like my 12-year-old, he's always like. He's search like, hey, do you know when this happens? I was like, I'm not sure, but he's like, search it up.
Right, like, but his mode of search would be TikTok.
Yeah, is whatever. Yeah, it's wherever he thinks. Like, he doesn't go straight to Google. He'll actually, and it's funny that we said YouTube, and now thinking about it, he'll go to YouTube to search for a general fact. Where I'd go to Google because I want to read boom stat.
Right.
Where he'll like go to YouTube and there'll be a video, and I'm like, bro, there could be a quicker way, but that's just where his brain works because he wants to see the fact, then he wants a little breakdown on it.
Yeah,
he wants that complete understanding quickly.
Man,
search it up.
It just reminds me, recently I heard a filmmaker named Harmony Korine say that he's a Nashville guy, made movies like Gummo, wrote a movie called Kids. But he recently said that, film as a media is dying as a format. And specifically, here's why. Your best talent, your youngest talent, your new creators, their dream isn't to make movies. Their dream isn't to tell that kind of narrative, that kind of story, right? We're doing the social media content creation clips. We're doing some experimental pieces over here. We're even still telling stories a different way, but film as a medium, 90-minute, 2-hour, that whole thing, according to Harmony, a thing of the past. Now, that's scary to a guy like me.
Me too.
But when you think of that slippery slope, we started out with theaters, projectors, literal film, then we went to digital, now we're streaming, now it's here, and then it just makes me think of these pillars like Google. Now, I'm old enough to remember life before Google.
Ask Jeeves.
And then Jeeves, remember that dude?
Yeah.
Right. But then came Google, such a big deal. The expectation just becomes Google exists in perpetuity now, like forever, right? We're now about to see that maybe eclipsed, possibly, even in my lifetime, maybe.
Yeah.
I just find that kind of stuff fascinating, man, that I can't even get stuck on things now for a generation because they move so quickly.
Yeah, and it's because that visual media style, like a part of getting older is you just kind of lose the trend. Certain words become, you don't know what it means, but they change so quickly. Like as a teacher, I remember when I first started teaching, been doing this 15 years, so not that long when you think of the generational arc. I could like latch onto a phrase like crash out. I could use that for like 2 years.
Yeah.
And the kids look at me like, dang, he knows
Yeah,
our words.
right,
Now
right.
I'll say like, watch, I'll say crash out in May.
Yeah.
And they'll be like, bro,
Dude.
that was from October.
Right.
What are you doing? Like, it's so fast. I'm like, I can't keep up. And I guess that's part of getting older because
Yeah.
you always wonder like at what point
When
you
I
just
when I
stop
do
saying,
stuff like
"I'm
that,
done."
my 10-year-old son will always remind me, hey, Dad, I know you were born in the 19s, man, but
You were in the 1900s.
that dude will tell me,
Yeah.
I know you were born in the 19s.
Yeah.
The 19s.
Yeah, they just call
That's
it-
how he refers to it.
Yeah,
the
they
19s.
just call us olds. Like
Olds.
I had a student be like, well, that's because you're an old. I'm like, an old? And they're like, yeah, that's why you want to do it that way. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not old.
Your birth year has a 9,
Yeah,
a 1.
a one in front of
A
it.
one.
What is happening to you?
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's talk so as we get this, so we've talked about who Gen Z, like who they are. We got
Yeah.
their base stats. We talked about what they want, work, and all those things. So let's talk about just throw it out there theoretically. Let's talk about what they can be. All right, so some ideas. So we're just going to throw it out. There's no, before we had stats and everything, but here we just have a couple strengths we can go through. So some of their strengths, they're pragmatic. Okay? They value relationships.
Yep.
And this is the interesting thing we talked about. They love people, no matter how different or shocking their lifestyles are. And I've seen that, very accepting. Kids walk in my classroom, just face full of metal. Nose piercings, eyebrow piercing, bunch of ear piercings, the like under the right here piercing. In growing up in my high school, that kid probably would have got teased by a couple. They would have went to their little group. They would tease. They just kind of come in and they're all talking. Like they're all hanging out. It's your value as what you offer. And they almost don't even see that, which is super interesting to me. They're self-starters. They create jobs, content. They just like hypocrisy, which is interesting. They would not follow institutions just because they're supposed to. Mm-hmm. They want evidence before they accept something as true. So that's the hashtag real, that Jason Bateman said.
Okay.
So that's some of their strengths. Some of their weaknesses. Empathy can overcome their morality. As we
there
talked
it
about,
is.
the
Right.
good, something that's good is something that doesn't hurt anybody else. What you talked about, Rose, like thinking about that, they can say, "Oh, I care so much about what they feel." Maybe they go against their own morals, which puts you in an interesting spot. And they have aversion to make any judgments due to their belief that truth and morality is relative. So they kind of where our generations are
That's
just
a big one there, man.
I know, like it's a thick one. Our generation, the older generations, is like you have your core morals and values, and it is like that is what I live by. It is cemented. Theirs are truth and morality is relative to the situation I'm in right now, which is super. It's scary.
It's fluid.
Right, yeah, and it's such a fluid. Like, does society get better because of that? Because we are just kind of moving and adjusting, and we're not so stuck on these. And we've seen where these morals have got us stuck.
In principle,
Yeah.
it seems like it could work, right? You're not so rigid that the thing crashes
Right.
or cracks or whatever. What's the whole Bruce Lee like philosophy, man? Be like water, right?
Right.
I mean, essentially be like grass. Like,
Yeah.
right. You bend but don't break. So that feels like that's the place that they're trying, to come from.
Right.
I think the cognitive dissonance piece for me to still get over is, so we're anti-hypocrisy, we're authenticity, we're even empathy over morals necessarily, but we still put all of those ideals, those principles through this filter. And it's still a filter, man.
It is, yeah.
And I guess I just kind of struggle with that hypocrisy a little bit.
Right.
Like wanting to take all those stats you said at face value, like accept them, but then there's that. But then It's like, well, man, nobody's perfect. I mean, yeah, they're pioneers. They're figuring this out. They're still shackled to some of these ideological oppressions from the past and the world that they live in with the people who are still leading it, Gen Xers primarily now. But yet they do want this other thing.
Right.
So they're still having to work and play within that box, but man, they're doing their best to expand.
Yeah, they're pushing the edges of that box.
Man, they really are like no other generation has necessarily done before it, with the exception, I'm sure, the Elon Musk of Gen X would say, wait a second, man, we invented these platforms. Like, we invented Pandora's box.
Right.
Like, let's don't get that twisted. You know, our generation did that.
Yeah, it's still the things you're using is our hard work.
Right.
You know, so like, hey, don't come play in my sandbox and then tell me how to use my sandbox. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's the interesting thing. And I think it's important to say that when we're talking about a 73 million person group, these are just general, like every individual is different. So I don't want to think that. And when I say they're against morals, it's not implying they're just bad. They're more flexible with what they feel in the moment, based on what they're seeing. You know, so maybe they're not, you know, just to be, you know, spicy, maybe they're not super comfortable with homosexuality. But then if they see somebody like going through something, they'd be like, you know what, I need to reevaluate that. Where older groups kind of like, nope, that's how I feel. It's really hard.
Empathy in that case is going to trump judgment.
Yeah, and that's their relative. Like, their morals are relative. Like, is my moral right? It's not cemented to where it can't be moved without. You know, how many movies and shows are there where they're trying to get that older guy to just believe something different? It's just a struggle. They're kind of more like, nah, okay, I see your side. I'll adjust. And they adjust quickly. So like,
the evidence is there.
Yeah, what they can be is they can be really great leaders. And you've seen that. I've seen some kids, you know, as a teacher, you're just always scanning a room. Like, okay, is there a conflict happening somewhere? Am I not seeing, what am I hearing? And so you always kind of like pick out little areas like, ooh, that could be a problem in a little bit. You know, two kind of very different people near each other. Maybe they're interacting. So you're kind of watching outside your eye. Gen Z, like I said, when like, you know, kid comes in with a face full of piercings, they don't have as much as that to me. Like, there's still kids getting bullied and picked on because that's just youth. It's just life in general, trying to figure out who they are. But they are like, they will accept somebody who, if I saw like, so a group of athletes, jocks, the old school jocks. We think of jocks very stereotyped from the 80s movies, but they're just jocks sitting there. And this kid comes up who's not a jock, right? Maybe more into, you know, some other things, or just not. They can come up and sometimes you can just see him like accept him. And it's just like, oh yeah, come here. And that's really cool because they do get that moment. Again, that's that authenticity. What do you bring? That's how I'm going to judge you first. I know you don't play sports.
Right.
That's something I can do. You can't do that. It's cool.
Right.
To where it was before, it was like bad.
The dude knows a whole lot about Lorcana, man. Like,
right. Yeah. Come talk to me.
And that's our jam too.
Yeah. Right? And you get kids, like I said, we're doing this from beautiful comic shop, and you know, now you're getting more acceptance to where like even jocks will start sharing that they like this stuff. It's not like, oh, nerdy,
right?
You know, it's just like, hey, this is what you like, and that's a really cool thing.
Yeah, I do. I like that. I like that idea about that generation.
Yeah, and being self-starters, they create a lot of things. So I think they'll be great leaders. Seeing them in school, they can do that. And again, they also kind of know what they want. I have a student who's super smart. He will not write. Like, he will write a sentence, maybe two, on a longer prompt. And he's smart. And it's just, he's like, you know, you sit down and talk to him, he's like, I don't want to do it. And I'm like, all right, well, it's going to really affect your grade. He's like, that's fine. He's like, I'll make it up on the other parts. He knows what he wants to do. And I'm like, so like, are you not worried? You know, I'm just trying to talk to him, like figuring this out. Because again, coming from my generation, it was like, oh my God, I got to do this perfect. I want to do it great. You know, like, I got to show my worth here. And he's like, no, he's like, I know what I want to do. So I just got to get this grade, and then I get into college, and they won't make me do so much like a regimented high school class.
Yeah.
So he's already worked all that out.
But look, man, I've been a principal, you know, within the last 5 years. I was a teacher before that. My wife is a current teacher, just like you, 19 years. I'm hearing you say all this, man, and it does sound encouraging, inspiring. But isn't this also like the most fragile generation?
Yeah.
Isn't this the generation that really struggles with facing adversity
and anxiety,
overcoming adversity? We've mentioned the anxiousness of this generation. We've mentioned the meteoric rise and continued upward trajectory of mental health crisis.
Yep.
Isn't this still that generation too?
Yeah, there are kids and people in this generation who are so anxious they don't leave their house. and not like agoraphobic.
Right.
But just, I don't want to deal with the outside
Dude,
situation.
in Japanese culture, and this is referenced in Anxious Generation, I mean, right, they have like a term for this person. That
Right.
society is struggling right now with reproducing.
Yep.
These people are so comfortable. Yes, they literally don't leave their rooms,
Yeah,
man.
they have their whole world there.
Yeah.
The interesting thing, though, so yes, as much as it has that in, I think, older generations, those people would get put in a very specific term. They get put in kind of, oh, you can't compete in this world because you have this affliction, let's call it. I think this generation says, I think they're going to be able to differentiate and say, here are the leaders, here are the go-getters. You don't like to go outside, but because of the way our world is digitized,
You do this.
you're going to make your stuff from here,
You
and we're
can
cool with
still
that.
monetize
Yeah, and
your
you're gonna have a great
content
life. We don't-
and live from this room
Yep.
and have your Uber Eats brought to you.
And you'll be fine. And
Yeah.
us leaders, the people who are vocal, we'll be out here doing that part. But we got you. I think
Right.
they're the generation, because of their acceptance, to where we think of that through our generations. Thing.
Right, you're right, you're right,
crap,
you're right.
If we had 30% of our people not leave the house, our economy would crash.
Right.
Because we're thinking of, I need people to do this, I need people to do this. Where they are, okay, you have a niche now.
Yeah.
They've made that niche. And we've kind of helped make it for them.
Right, and I may be looking at this through rose-colored glasses now, but okay, so if my anxiousness won't allow me to leave outdoors, instead, I'm just going to figure out
What I can do here.
how to monetize it and do it from here, instead of just, I'm going to wilt in here, and it's this really tragic, sad story.
Yeah.
That would be looking at it through the eyes of a Gen Xer who was raised being told you're lazy if you're doing
Yep.
that, right?
To-
You're weird if you're doing
Yeah.
that.
What, go outside.
What
Like,
are
that's
you?
the thing.
What value are you? A productive member of society? This is just Gen Z's lens of, if that's your lane, then that's your lane.
Right.
Figure it out
It's up to you to be productive in it.
and leave it. Live a happy
And
life.
to
Just
a-
don't hurt anybody else doing it.
Right. And to a person who lives that, they would look at us and go, I'm Rose.
Right.
She didn't want the life they
And
said.
you're lame. You're a cog in somebody's
Yeah.
wheel.
I'm-
man.
I'm
You
living the
support
life.
somebody else's brand that could give two licks about you at the end of the day. I mean, so they look at us with a lot of
Yeah, they're like,
hypocrisy, too.
you just went and fought an old lady for a can of green beans at Kroger. I had mine delivered. So who's smarter?
Right.
Like that's like
I didn't pay that $15 premium on it to get that
Yeah.
89-cent can. Of
right.
green
And
beans,
that's the
but
problem. That's the argument. Like I want to DoorDash all the time, but I'm like, no, get in the truck and
Right.
drive to save the money. To where
Right.
they're like, that's worth it. Like them, they look at time differently. They look at worth, like what could I
Yeah.
be doing? So
Right.
it's super interesting, and that's who they could be. They could be leaders. They can be pioneers, like we called them. And again, I honestly feel that we're at this interesting thing where we have to start looking at it almost like they do, to really understand, because we do get caught in those old
That's
things.
why I said earlier, I agree with that 100%. And I loved how you put it. I mean, we have to, this is where empathy kicks in. We've got to step out of our shoes, stop looking at it through our generation's lens,
Right.
and really try to embrace, where they're coming from, which is, where I was sort of getting into this earlier, from that Gen Z mindset, and saying, it may not be necessarily this doomed generation,
Right.
if you take a step back and understand that they're pioneers in this new matrix, that they didn't build, they inherited,
They did
because they're
inherit.
digital natives.
And we're interested in how they'll change it too.
Right. Right. So they weren't the architects, but now that they're on the inside and figuring it out as things change, they do become the new architects of this.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's interesting to see where these things go. Because again, even within this generation, you have, all my kids are in this generation, okay? And you'll still have, but again, you have leaders, you have the active ones. And like, so my eldest, he'll sit in front of a video game just as much as any other kid. But he'll come into my youngest room like, have you gone outside today? Just like messing with him, being a big brother.
Yeah.
And my youngest will be like, no. And he's like, go touch some grass, kid. Like he'll still like, there is that motivate. They still
Right.
value that. So
Yeah.
that's what I mean. You see, it's a really interesting multi-layered generation to where you can have all these things. You have the person who's super productive, never leaves the house. You can have the person who's so much anxiety, maybe they're not being productive. You have leaders out there being vocal and rallying people. So they have all this stuff because they have all that information. They are, again, most well-educated generation ever. I mean, think about that. Not ever in terms of, since like the 1900s. In the history of this human species, most educated generation ever.
Right.
It's crazy.
And I think I'm going to be able to walk away from today 100% able to say my thinking has changed on this generation. In approximately 2 hours, I've really sort of shifted my thinking in terms of this, yes, creative but fragile, anxious, confused generation who had this terrible experiment put upon them. That's a victim of a merciless algorithm. That's my mind kind of walking into this.
It's easy to think that way.
But now really analyzing, dissecting some of these things that we know about this generation, how large it is, and like you said, this kind of multi-layered approach to it. I mean, I think there's a lot of upside to this generation. I think based on that last bit you said, their imprint on Gen Alpha, this next generation that's coming up. My son is 10. He's a part of that. I'm already starting to feel some recalibration from that group on social media addiction, what we believe is too much, being too extra, being on all the time, that kind of thing. So I'm wondering how now Gen Z does become, back to your leadership sort of mantra for them, a leader to this generation on, hey, these guys screwed us. Let's call it what it is.
Right.
We were put into this terrible experiment. We were giving us these, the new ads that have just come out for Instagram teen accounts. I'm thinking, man, if I'm a Gen Zer on the older end, especially, you're gonna come out with teen accounts now?
Right.
My dopamine receptors are cooked. To use their language. I'm already cooked. I've crashed out multiple times. Now you want to give me an Instagram teen account, but that to me is that imprint. That's Gen Z saying, look, man, learn from us. We don't want you, because they're empathy based. We don't want you to be as anxious as we were. Don't live and die by these filters. The persona in real life is where it's at. Figure that piece out. Maybe that's me.
Have authentic connections.
Yeah, man. I mean, that to me fills me with hope.
And you see that. And just two last little things here, just kind of going off that. I think we've already seen the growth there that then I think Gen Z will help Alpha grow. Millennials are well known for, or as much as we talk about Gen Z being so anxious to go out, millennials are known for being the generation that transitioned from talking on the phone to do not do anything but text me. If you call me, I will watch it ring, I will see it go to voicemail, and then 2 minutes later I will text you, hey, what's up? Because they were like, oh my gosh, I have this, I don't have to have that. And I think that went into that's, parenting, rubs off.
Yeah.
But Gen Z now is actually more interested. They FaceTime more than anything good. They want to see each other.
That's right.
Sometimes they even have it facing the ceiling.
I've never thought of that. If you take away anything from today's podcast,
they're connecting
we
more
went
than millennials.
From phone to texting, but we're back to FaceTime.
Yeah.
We're back to the call.
Yep. They're connecting visually, at least, on each other more than millennials ever do.
Yes.
And that's super. So like much as
because
we
we
say,
learned, one thing I think we did learn from texting, from emails. I remember, man. Well, you can't ascertain tone from an email, right? Same with texting. But now millennials, empathy based. Hey, I'm going to need some kind of. I think maybe as a Gen Xer looking at my lens, but I'm going to want to know.
I need facial cues.
Yeah, like
I need to know what you're feeling.
Yes. Yeah. I'm not going to get that from a tone, which increases my anxiety.
Yep.
Hey, man, I need to know how that made you feel. I've got a brother who's 12 years younger than me. He's in the military. He's a sergeant. He's a great dude, but he's 12 years younger than me.
Yeah.
So the other night I'm texting with him, and I got to tell him something kind of heavy, but I want to give it in his speak. So I noticed that with him, for as long as we've texted and communicated, he'll either use LOL or now the laughing face emoji. And sometimes I even wonder, like, did you laugh out loud after you said
I've watched
that? Like,
my wife
why are
do
you
it.
saying that? Like, I know, and I love him. But this week, dude, I did it myself. I had to hit him with something kind of heavy. So I do it, and then I put the the hilarious face emoji, but just to soften it in his language. So I know he knows okay, he's not mad. He's just like, this is heavy and ha ha ha.
Absolutely.
But those kind of things, man.
I've seen my wife text, so we have a group chat with some friends. So she's laying on the couch, and her face is just chilling face.
Yes.
Almost stern.
Stoic.
Just like thinking.
Right.
And so, but then the text comes across my phone, and it's like,
LOL.
Yeah, 2 rolling on the floor laughing emojis plus all these exclamation points, and I'm like, you okay? And that is, I think Gen Gen Z has said, hey, because they're so therapy speak driven,
yeah,
and they get that.
Yeah,
they said like, bro, this makes me anxious.
To me, that's a breadcrumb though.
Yeah.
Like that. That
I don't
was
like not knowing what you're
millennials'
thinking.
way of like, we're texting here because it is anxious to be on the phone.
Right.
But now I'm texting, but I do need you to kind of understand where I'm coming from. So I throw an LOL on there. And then we graduated from that to now we're back to FaceTime so I can emote. So you can emote the right way and I can understand it. And there's no miscommunication, which impacts my anxiety.
Where I think millennials were more willing to be like, you know what, I'll deal with my anxiety on my own. I'd rather not talk on the phone. I'll deal with how I'm reading your coded messages.
Yeah.
Where Gen Z is like, you know what, I don't need extra anxiety. So we'll just see each other. Because I've told my wife before, I was like, look, I can't have you just writing a sentence with a period because I'm going to read it like you're mad. Because I'm pure millennial. So I'm like, I need you to throw in a LOL. So I need to know when you're serious or when it's like lighthearted. Because I mean, if you send the same thing like, we're out of milk, period. Or we're out of milk.
Which could be read as
point.
because you're dumb-tailed and buy any last time you were at the store.
Lazy, we out of milk, go get some. Or we're out of milk, exclamation point. It's like, oh, that means I need to go get it. So just that one thing can mean different things, and I can read it through whatever mood.
But if I
right
say
now.
we're out of milk, LOL.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm like, that's crazy. Okay, I'll stop and get some. It keeps conversation going.
Oh man, I forgot.
So if I say I'm out of milk, period, I read it like, am I in trouble? Like, did I do something wrong?
But now I've got to have the FaceTime. Hey, we're out of milk. I think I'm gonna run by the store.
Yeah, it's like, hey, could you go get it? Yeah, they're like driving, they're like walking. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So I think, we talked about Gen Z. I think we learned a lot.
Man, we answered a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we asked great questions.
Man,
good questions today. I feel like I learned more about this generation than I knew before coming in. I really do think my mindset has shifted on the possibilities of that generation. The hope that I think they bring to the table on not only the work they're currently doing, but how they're impacting Gen Alpha before them, how they are re-engineering what Gen X has put upon them.
Mm-hmm.
So some exciting takeaways for this one, man. And great for our first video produced episode here. Big shout out to Cadets Toys and Comics, my man Tommy Ruth. Shout out our sponsor, popcatalog.com. Go check them out. Incredible vintage movies, collectibles, everything you could find. Get it at popcatalog.com. Check out Cadets Toys and Comics here in Spring Hill, Tennessee, right on Main Street. Can't miss us.
It's a great spot.
We are Edu Warfare, Dr. Jordan Lauer, myself, Dr. Ryan Jackson, proud to be a part of this new media movement, man, where we ourselves are basing everything we do on authenticity, experience. We're bringing you truth. We're inviting you to be a part of the conversation. Tell them a little bit about that, man. Connect with us on our channels.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'd love to hear your thoughts, your strategies, comments about this. Any stories you have about Gen Z, like your interactions with them, any questions you have. We'd love to hear that. Email the show at educationalwarfare.pod@gmail.com. On all the socials again, on YouTube, we're at EDU Warfare. You can search for the channel, watch the show, watch any other content. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button there and follow button on whatever other podcast service you listen to. We're still doing the audio, so any Apple people out there, you're listening to this, that's cool. You want to see us, pop over to YouTube, pop over to Spotify, look at that too. And for any new content or episode, so I think it's been a great day. Understanding Gen Z is good. I think it's a good thing. It makes the world better. We're passing the torch to them, so we can understand them. I think it helps. So
I want to kind of throw out a call to action here. I've spoken with a couple of parents of Gen Zers recently to kind of prime me for this episode, and there's a common thread amongst them that and a lot of our kids are struggling. Yeah. Especially our early 20s Gen Zers.
Trying to find themselves.
If you're a parent listening to this, would love to hear your experiences, especially if you have a kid 20 plus. If you've got a Gen Zer who's 20 plus, I would really love to hear from you where they are in life, how they're doing, what they're doing. I think it's fascinating, but would love to just hear those different perspectives. So please chime in, especially, if you're a Gen X parent with a Gen Z kid who's 20 or older, how those kids who grew up under this kind of experiment, where they are in life right now. We'd just love to hear from those parents.
Absolutely. Yeah. So educationalwarfare.pod@gmail or at EDU Warfare on X.
Or drop us a comment in the YouTube.
Yeah, drop us a comment in YouTube. We'd love to hear from you. So it's been awesome being here, from Cadet Toys and Comics, beautiful spot. For Tommy Ruth, for Dr. Ryan Jackson, I'm Dr. Jordan Lauer, saying thank you for contributing and for emails. Thank you for listening. And thank you for being a part of the fight.